Okay, I guess it's down to me on starting number 5, and I will go ahead and throw my shades on while I do that, and put this John Carpenter classic up on the screen. They Live. And you know me and my love for pro wrestling. The star of this film is the one and only Roddy Piper. This is yeah. There's an action figure of him in the film with the shades there. You can see. And yeah, if you don't know They Live, let me just tell you a little bit about it. He plays a wanderer named Nada, and he doesn't really have any meaning to his life, and he happens upon these sunglasses, and when he puts them on, he sees this subliminal messaging coming through. Like, for instance, it would be he would see a billboard without the glasses that see you got a model in a bikini, and it's saying smoke these cigarettes, and then he throws the shades on, and it's just a white billboard with big black letters that say procreate. And it's like and he'll look at something else, and it'll white and with big black letters it'll say obey. And then he looks at certain people while wearing the shades, and they've got these gruesome alien kind of faces. Some people, they just are people, but some of them are actual alien faces, and it's a very paranoia inspired kind of a plot. It also has Keith David. Roddy Piper and Keith David have this wonderful fight scene that goes way too long. I mean, it's kind of puzzling how John Carpenter made this film when he's made all these other films. It almost feels like he's kicking his feet up a little bit at times. Like, you know what? I'm just going to coast on my name a little bit here. But it's a sight to behold, this film. And it just keeps going. And the line, I have come to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble gum. That's from this movie.
Yeah. At this point in his career, I think the studios were giving him some stuff because he hadn't had a hit in a while. Those movies that we look back on and say they're brilliant, like The Thing, it bombed. Big Trouble in Little China, it bombed. These things became cult classics after the fact, but studios were just like not really giving him the big movies anymore. And I think they took Firestarter away from him or something because Christine would do so good. So he was just like, I'm going to make these smaller movies. So in 1987 and 88, he made this movie and another movie that may show up on the list in a bit. Relatively cheaper movies, meaning they're big studio movies made for under $10 million, like, $5 million or whatever. And this movie is so good, man. I remember seeing it in the theater and just not knowing what to expect. I was like, oh, you mean the wrestler guy's in it? Oh, aliens or something? Yeah. You can't. It's just one of those, you watch a John Carpenter movie and it's just usually it's a fun narrative. There's like this whole it's like an action movie plot overlaid with this weird sci-fi horror plot.
Yeah. If you're going to watch one Roddy Piper film, I recommend They Live. You could put aside Hell Comes to Frogtown.
You don't like the frog movie? Weren't they like trying to harvest his sperm so they could make humans that weren't frogs or something?
Something like that. I don't know.
Well, transitioning from frog sperm, I'll go with my number 5. Again, another one pretty mainstream, but one that left an indelible impression on me. The Exorcist. I saw this on a re-release. Yeah. I'm definitely glad that I saw it in the theater. For those of you who don't know, when a teenage girl is possessed by a mysterious entity, her mother seeks the help of 2 priests to save her daughter. Just iconic, classic. Linda Blair is the possessed girl, and the makeup when she's possessed is just amazing. Ellen Burstyn in the film actually broke her back in one of the stunts because that's how intense William Friedkin was in making this film. She multiple times complained about a certain stunt, and he just ignored her to get the best take out of her. Again, would not fly today, but that just kind of gives you an idea of how committed he was to telling this story, unfortunately at the expense of his actors. But just such a beautifully shot movie, such a wonderfully written story. And again, it kind of plays with that idea of uh, the horror of the unknown and demonic possession, and it kind of plays into that paranoia. Um, just a film that, and another one that the Academy looked favorably on. It was also nominated for Best Picture. And I need to revisit The Sting, but in my opinion, currently, I think The Exorcist is better. So,
yeah, I mean, this is another one of those movies on this list that is, it's probably near perfection as it is. And I revisited it last year, and I was just like, of course, Max von Sydow is so perfect in it. But the way this movie starts, it really draws you into the narrative in a weird way, because it takes you a long time to figure out what the hell is going on with that opening sequence. And even then, it leaves it kind of vague. And I love that,
And it seems to me like one of the first based on true events kind of horror film, or,
Yeah.
it's even more terrifying that this could have possibly happened to somebody. Yeah.
Like Texas Chainsaw, and it's like, ooh, it really happened.
And it kind of picks up on that idea of the subliminal messaging that Chris brought, just with the flashes of the demon. I watched it for the first time, I think it was 2020.
So that's an interesting point. You gotta watch the director's cut. If you watch this movie, you gotta watch what those cuts put back in, because the original theatrical release took some stuff out, like those cuts.
Yeah, the little crab walk down the stairs, that wasn't in the original film, I believe.
No, it wasn't. And those one frame shots of the demon weren't.
Yeah, which myself and MC Young Knees got together and watched it during spooky season of 2020, and
nice.
We were unnerved.
Wow. Oh, it's beautifully unnerving. I love it.
And just kind of piggybacking on just The Exorcist as like a franchise. Shout out to the Exorcist TV series they made. It only lasted about 2 seasons. I watched the first one, and it kind of acts kind of like how the updated Halloween movies treat everything. They kind of do that with The Exorcist. They ignore the sequels and kind of acts as a direct sequel to the original movie. Really good, great performance in it by Gina Davis as an adult Reagan.
Man, I gotta check that out. I didn't even know that was a thing. That's cool.
It's on Hulu. Recommend. But yeah, that was a kind of a side tangent. But I always bring up that show because not enough people have seen it, and Gina Davis is so good in it.
Exorcist 3 is pretty good. 2 is, generally regarded as not so good, but 3 has some good stuff in it.
That is,
it was a Best Picture nominee, if I remember right. The Exorcist, yeah, that's awesome. And Max von Sydow, I believe, was nominated too, and Linda Blair, right?
Really, that's cool.
Yeah, I have it up here. Let me double check.
Yeah, but
so many
won
Oscars
moments. For adapted screenplay and best sound. Ellen Burstyn, Jason Miller, Linda Blair, William Friedkin. No Max von Sydow, but a lot of nominations. Yeah.
Jason Miller is somebody's dad. Jason Patrick's dad.
Really?
You know who that is?
Yeah.
They look the same now that Jason Patrick has gotten to that age. They look like the same person.
That's nuts. On the DJ Uncle Spoopy.
Yes, moving right along. My number 5 I put on here just because it has a lot of like sentimental value to me. But I actually put Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, because if memory serves correct, it is the first Hitchcock movie I ever saw. Me too. It was one my mom had always talked about, really scared her. So one day we found it. And we watched it together, and I just love just like the overall like aesthetic of the movie, which, like, let's be honest, like it's just like Tippi Hedren being like so picturesque and like wonderful in it. It never really truly scared me, but it's just one that I will always revisit. And there is something unnerving about, flocks of birds trying to kill everything in sight. So that's not lost on me. And also another one of like the rare examples of like horror like in the daytime. And it's also a great example of like building tension, because there's a lot that happens before the titular birds kind of bring the overall terror. But yeah, love the birds. First Hitchcock movie I ever saw. I think Psycho is ultimately like Hitchcock's masterpiece, obviously, but the birds will always just have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, once again, swarms of anything will be scary.
and also another example of a director mistreating his actors. He promised Tippy that she wouldn't be interacting with any live birds, and he threw live birds at her. So
it's true.
It's not good for Tippy. It's not good for the birds.
It's not good for anybody.
It's good that so many classics are popping up here. Really, really good movies.
Yeah. Well, and I guess part of that was he didn't realize what a technical nightmare it would be to work with the birds. Like he tried real birds and puppet birds and special effects, animation, and it was just apparently a more to ask for than he thought it would be.
Yeah.
And
they kept telling him to use CGI. He's like, "What's that?"
right. Just do it.
He's like, "What is that? Who are you? And what is that big machine you're standing in front of?"
All right, F-bomb. What do you got?
I gotta go with Phantasm 2. Right, this
part two.
Now, this is a rather iconic series with one of those sort of iconic villains, the tall, and also one of those movies where you have, of course, the iconic instrument of torture, right? So the flying silver ball that has a variety of hardware implements that come out the front of it and drill into your head, chop your brain parts, spray your blood and brains all asunder across the room. Some of those images that are so frightening in the first one.
He looked like he was having a fun time with it, actually. I thought it looked like a Nickelodeon game show.
Yeah, it's like he's spraying slime everywhere. He's like, "I don't know," and it's, the reason I chose the second one is it took what worked well in the first one and kind of expanded from there. So the first one is, of course, wonderful. It's more low budget. The second one, the studio threw like $10 million at it. It's like, here, do a big movie. Of course, they recast the lead actor, which became a point of controversy. But they took what worked well in the original and they basically turned Phantasm into a road movie. So they're moving from town to town and they're sort of on the trail of the tall man, this creepy villain whose origin is really mysterious, played wonderfully by Angus Scrimm, another one of my heroes of horror, who passed away relatively recently. But the idea that they're kind of following him, and as they go from town to town, all of these little Midwestern towns are kind of wastelands behind him because he's already ransacked the cemetery and doing what the tall man does without giving away too much. Phantasm 2 is one of those perfect combinations of what works well across two genres, like an action genre and a horror genre with lots of comedy mixed in. So of course it appealed to me.
Nice.
Anybody seen that one?
I haven't seen any of the Phantasm movies. No, I need to.
It's a 5-movie collection right here if you want to borrow it.
All right. Wonderful. Yeah, I've heard good things about the first one. I'd not heard anything about part 2 until just
first
now.
One's great. I like the second one. After that, I would say your results may vary.
So my next entry, I'll say give either one of them a try. I'm kind of cheating here, but it's kind of one movie and it's kind of two movies. Good, funny games on. There's one from 1997 and there's one from 2007. They are both made by Michael Haneke, and they are, one is the original, one is a shot-for-shot remake in the English language starring not American actors, but actors we recognize here in America. Naomi Watts and Tim Roth primarily. And Naomi Watts helped produce the shot-for-shot remake. So this is another film where the filmmaker is okay with breaking the rules, and it makes a little bit more of an intense and unsettling atmosphere as a result. So it's a family coming to a vacation home, Caucasian family, a dad, a mother, and a young boy. They arrive at their vacation home, and suddenly there's a knock at the door, and there are these two very preppy Caucasian teenage boys. Look like they're about to, I can't remember what sport they're about to play. It's like tennis or squash or something, or it's golf. Croquet, thank you. You've seen it. Yeah, it's so they come in and they just kind of intrude into the house, and the slaughter begins, I should say. But there's a lot of things to take note with this movie. A lot of the violence you don't actually see, but you hear it. It's happening off camera, and you think about what wonderful actors people like Tim Roth and Naomi Watts are. They really bring it, and the young boy as well, and it makes your imagination do the work, which is very rough. There's a point, I won't give away too much in this scene, but it becomes clear that the two teenage boys know that we are watching all of this unravel. They break the fourth wall. And there's a sequence where it looks like they're not going to get away with it, and they break the rules to make it more in their favor. And it's quite a statement that this movie's making, possibly a little bit of a hypocritical statement from the filmmaker, but yeah, it's something to be said about how much we flock to the violence sometimes in these movies, and it kind of exploits that. It's watch either one of the movies. Either one of them is
sound
great.
like funny games at all.
Right. Right. Yeah. Anybody else that has seen it want to chime in? Feel free.
I have not seen it.
Yeah, I will say it's definitely very unsettling. I may need to revisit it because I was just, I left with a negative impression of the film just because it was so unsettling, and I didn't really connect with the film because of it. So it might be worth another look now that I'm a bit more mature.
Yeah, and the filmmaker Michael Haneke would go on to make Amor and receive a Best Direction nomination from the Academy. Finally, that was 2012. Yeah, yeah, he's a good filmmaker. I've also seen another film he made called Cachet, which was also he plays with the camera, he plays with the editing, he knows what he's doing, and he has a unique vision.
That is cool.
Yeah,
I'll have to check it out though. I haven't seen either one of them.
Yeah, man, you would like it.
Yeah, cool.
I think.
Okay, right. My next selection is connected to Tay-Tay's previous selection of the birds through Veronica Cartwright. My film is Alien from 1979.
Nice.
Another film that I was able to see in the theater on a re-release. It's just such a beautifully shot film. Like it really, it's one of the first films that I've seen that really captures the emptiness of space and how that actually becomes like almost another character in the story, like the isolation that everyone on the ship feels because of it. And of course the classic chest burster scene, often lampooned. But to think about the first time that ever happened, when it did happen, the rest of the crew did not know that was going to happen. So the reactions if the take that was used are genuine. Like they had no idea that that's what was going to happen to William Hurt. So it's not only one of my favorite horror sci-fi films, it's one of my favorite films. I think it's just a wonderfully made film with phenomenal performances from Sigourney Weaver, Tom Skerritt, John Hurt. I said William Hurt. That's a very different person. John Hurt and Veronica Cartwright all put in terrific performances, and even the cat. Diva wanted me to make sure that I mentioned the cat.
Yeah.
I was worried about that cat when I saw that movie, and it was,
Right.
okay. Because people go for the cheap scare or the cheap horror of,
Yep.
no, Jones is going to be fine. That's a spoiler. We have to spoil that at least.
That is my favorite horror film, I would say. It solves the problem of the haunted house, where it's like, why don't you just leave the house?
Mhm.
You know,
Yes.
this one you can't. You're in
Yeah.
the vastness of space. You know, and yeah, it's just so clever. It's a lot of people mistake it for a one-trick pony doing the one scene with the chest burster, but the whole movie just plays on the dread so well. And it's a horror film. I'd say the sequel is an action movie. Aliens is an action movie, but the first movie that Ridley Scott made, absolutely a horror film, and they all should have listened to the woman and her cat.
Right. And this is one of the films that I dressed as a character. I dressed as John Hurt one Halloween, complete with a chest burster made out of a pair of pantyhose. So
yeah, I agree completely about that choice. It's we're getting all of the classics, all of the near perfect horror films, and so much of that movie is filled with unique environment, atmosphere of dread.
Yeah, again, I've chosen the ones that have had an impact on me, so they're classic screen for a reason.
Did anybody see that
stay
in the
with you.
theater?
Yeah, I saw it at a midnight showing at Baxter.
I saw it somewhere like that too, and I was just like, it's one of those movies you gotta see.
Yeah, to see it in that scope, it's kind of like Gravity, where it's meant to be seen on the big screen. I think space movies are just meant to be seen on the big screen because they rely so much on just the vastness and emptiness.
2001: A Space Odyssey on the big screen.
I really want to see that on the big screen.
I was screening it in Strickler Hall or I was test screening it in Strickler Hall at U of L because I was going to show it in class, and it was just me in the darkness in that scene in 2001 where it's just that ambient music, and I turned around and I was like, oh, this movie is a horror movie. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
one is a horror movie.
Yeah, especially when the spoilers when the computer takes over.
Yeah,
that's very scary because imagine nowadays we have such a reliance on technology, but back then how unnerving that would be because there was that fear of the unknown back then. Like they didn't really understand how all that worked.
Oh yeah,
so, I would definitely that's a unique take, but one I definitely agree with. 2001 as a horror movie.
Excellent choice.
I had a friend sketch me as I was watching Alien for the first time. There's a drawing of me watching it, and I don't know that I realized it was a horror film until I was watching it. I'd like to think he finished the sketch just as Ian Holm had all the white splatter on it. But we'll go on now to DJ. Go ahead.
Yes. So my number 4 was actually Scream, which I feel like we've already talked enough about in depth. So I'll sub in one of my alternates. It's one that I alluded to earlier, and I'm glad I'm going to get to bring it up properly. But I really, really loved Ready or Not.
Yes.
Also starring Samara Weaving. That was kind of the thing that like the Babysitter plus Ready or Not kind of put her in the cultural zeitgeist of, she does horror movies now and she's great at them. But basically the overall premise is that there's this woman who's marrying into this very, very rich and eccentric family. And on the night of the wedding, she has to get together with his side of the family. And they have this ritual whenever somebody new joins the family, they have to play a game. And most of the games are harmless, but every once in a while they have to play hide and seek. And it is not your average game of hide and seek. But essentially through a bunch of different means, she has to survive until the morning. But it is a very, very, very funny. A good amount of gore in it too, but all of it justified. And it's just one of those movies that, when you see the trailers for it, you're like, this movie has like no right to be as good as it is. But yeah, Ready or Not, definite recommend. I think it's gonna end up being like a modern classic.
I love Samara Weaving, and that movie was probably the first time I saw her in anything. She's badass. What else has she been in? Have you seen a movie called Mayhem?
No.
Check out Mayhem. Not only does it have her in it, but it has a really cool Faith No More song in it, which appeals to me. But it has a really interesting premise, and I don't want to detract from your choice, so I won't. Check that out if you like Samara.
Yep, Bill and Ted Face the Music featuring
Bill and
Samara.
Ted.
She's also in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Didn't know.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And she was in the Ryan Murphy limited series
Hollywood
on Netflix.
Okay.
Cool.
Mixed results on that one, but she was good in it.
Yeah, and she was in a movie with Daniel Radcliffe where he had like guns bolted to his hands.
Guns Akimbo.
Yeah.
Oh, and before we move on to it, I would be remiss if I didn't also mention a great performance in Ready or Not from Andy McDowell.
Really?
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of fun in that
matriarch,
movie.
yeah.
Gotta check that one out.
Yeah, there's
I believe
a ton
it
of great
is on
people.
HBO Max.
Okay.
Prime Video, rent or buy, $3.99.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah, Adam
There you go,
Brody.
Prime.
from
We're doing your
OC
job
was
for
in
you.
there.
Mr. F. Baum, if you will.
All right. John Carpenter's going to show up again here.
Nice.
Prince of Darkness. So this is one of his, people see this as the B-list John Carpenter sometimes. But this is the second of those movies that he made after he was done with studio intervention and wanted to make these movies his own way. He made They Live, and then he made Prince of Darkness. I think this one came out second. I really like this movie. It's really iconic. It presents this really interesting mythology of God and the devil, and sort of an alternate take on ontological horror, metaphysical horror, right? And it's got Donald Pleasance in a really cool role. And it's dealing with a horror that centered itself in academia in this college campus. So I can relate to that. And it's got, it's again, one of these movies where John Carpenter is sort of blending his favorite sort of elements of genres. So it's got the action elements. It's got, he always looks at his movies. I think he's quoted as saying, all of my movies are Westerns, right? So you have the badass gritty hero, and you have the sort of, evil or bad guys that are converging on a location, and then you have the sort of people who have to defend it, like in an old Western. So in this one, the forces of darkness are converging on this college campus, and one of the interesting figures that is consistently shown is a homeless man played by Alice Cooper. And so he never has any lines, but he's consistently creepy in a lot of the movie. And you have the familiar tropes of various characters being possessed, right, being overtaken by the evil presence. And you have a mysterious organization called the Brotherhood of Sleep, so you have all of these other cool things. I've got a t-shirt that says the Brotherhood of Sleep on it. It has the pentagram and weird stuff, and people always ask me what that is. I'm like, you got to check this out.
Cool.
Prince of Darkness. Let me see if I do have an image. Yeah, okay. Lots of creepy imagery, lots of horrific imagery, lots of really disturbing things. And a man gets killed with a bicycle. And I'm not talking about like somebody runs into him with a bicycle. The bicycle is used as the weapon of choice by Alice Cooper. So,
like he bludgeons him with it, or like?
No, he puts the bicycle through him.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Wow.
I don't know why they chose that, but it's interesting. I think this is, for me, top tier John Carpenter, right? I won't say it's the last good movie he made, because he made some good movies after that, but it's probably the best of the later middle period, maybe. Yeah. Anybody else seen this? I know I went a little deep.
But it definitely has my attention, and I'm definitely on a Donald Pleasance kick now that I've really watched Halloween.
Yeah, because he's a priest who comes to terms with the fact that a certain story he's been told his whole life was manipulated, right? Mm-hmm. And so the premise is that starts out, they find this ancient artifact underneath this university that has been kept secret, and the last person to hold the secret is passing away. So he passes it on to this other person in their order, and then he has to come and discover this whole thing, and it becomes a mystery story. It becomes metaphysical horror. It has a really creepy twist ending that involves sort of a prophetic visions, and they're trying to figure out what the nature of those are. And when you figure out what that is, you're like, oh man, my head just exploded, right?
Wow.
Saw that as a little kid and got really creeped out. So of course that, like, your criteria of Mr. Diablo potatoes, those that left a mark on you, this one definitely left a mark on F-bomb.
Cool. So my next film, there's been a recent remake of it, so maybe a lot more people are aware of it now, but it's still underrated in my book. I'm gonna throw out Candyman from 1992. If I ever meet Tony Todd in real life, I'm probably like gonna scream and run the other way, probably soil myself. He was such a good monster as the Candyman, and he's just got this dark, this deep, dark, romantic kind of a voice, and it's just like, it soothes you to sleep, and you don't want to go to sleep with this guy with a hook for a hand near you. There's a lot of very cool visuals in this movie. There's some wonderful camera work. You have before she was nominated, Virginia Madsen as the central protagonist. This is the 1992 original, I'm saying. And of course, the premise is, if you say Candyman 3 times in the mirror, he will appear and kill you. If you really want to chance it. And there's a whole lot of backstory to the Candyman that we learn a little later, but it's very unsettling kind of a movie, and it got rewritten by Jordan Peele, I believe. The remake was, but definitely give the original a try. It's very spooky. A lot of play with real live bees, and Tony Todd, I think, got a huge sum of money for every bee sting, and it was like 1,000 for every sting, I believe, and he got stung 27 times. So something like that. But he and Virginia Madsen, both good sports with the bees flying all around their face and such. And it's a movie that I had it on, and Sue came down and said, "Are you watching Candyman? I can never ever watch that movie ever again." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll definitely have to give this a try then." And it stuck with me. I was happy to give it a visit, and I did watch it because the remake was about to hit theaters.
Yeah,
but
I love Virginia Madsen in that. The Philip K. Glass musical score to that is another of those iconic scores with that arpeggio. And that do 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 do. Oh wait, now we're gonna get a copyright strike because I did that. No, it's a beautiful movie. I love it. And some of the things are, you could say they're reusing some conventions or tropes or cliches, but it's a really good adaptation of that Clive Barker story. So Clive Barker's making some appearances. We're having some legends that keep returning to this list, and I think that's good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry if I was.
Oh, I just didn't know if anybody else had seen Candyman, the original.
Yeah, I saw it in college, and I swore waking up to go to the restroom that I saw the Candyman in the mirror. I swore again.
Oh man,
definitely left an impression.
He signed my autograph book. No.
Okay, my movie next is Saw. I saw in the theater, and a little bit of an insight into how my brain works. Anytime I watch a movie, if I sense that there's going to be a twist ending, my brain automatically tries to figure it out before it's revealed. That's just how my brain works. And with this movie, I never saw the twist. Spoilers, the twist ending. I never saw the twist coming. And anytime a film can do that, it earns my appreciation.
For sure.
And kind of researching, kind of revisiting, compiling this list, they was some really they really used what they could. Like there was really scrappy filmmaking. Like the puppet was made by director James Wan for the film. Like they had like hardly any money. Like everything was shot in a warehouse, but the way they they redress and the way that they set everything up, it's just a kind of a lesson in guerrilla filmmaking. Ended up making millions of dollars. One of the most successful horror films of all time. But it's also a testament to James Wan and Lee Wanell, just never giving up. Like they pitched this film for years and never got it made in their native Australia, and then it actually was bought by an American film studio. And you have to mention Cary Elwes. Like anytime Cary Elwes shows up on screen, it's just something that's compelling no matter what he does. And just kind of playing into that idea of how there's someone out there trying to exact justice for people's wrongdoings is a very kind of scary notion that people know your secrets. They want to try to punish you for them, because we all have secrets, and the fact that someone knows them and wants to seek justice for those is very scary and very unsettling. So I will say that I am such a fan of the Saw franchise that no matter how terrible, talking about the law of diminishing returns, I will see a Saw movie in the theater. Like I've seen them all. One of the rare franchises that I've seen every single film.
You saw Spiral, I bet, right?
I did see Spiral.
Yeah. It made my fingers hurt.
yeah, it was something. But I saw it.
Jeff says that's the movie I saw.
That's the movie. It was motion and pictures. There was dialogue and
there were
and sound and stuff.
Did Chris Rock get slapped?
No, he should have, but he didn't.
Yeah, the film's a bit of a Renaissance film too, because that we didn't really learn the phrase torture porn until that movie and a few others. Hostel came out. Yeah, it kind of brought it along. And I did see Saw in the theater as well. You need a second person to see Saw completely, but no, it was a fun time in the theater. It was a packed crowd. I was happy to join them with that.
Yeah, really good at being unsettling with the body horror, right?
Not for me.
And it's fun to do the Jigsaw voice. To be like, I want to play a game. Yeah. That's good. DJ, go right ahead, buddy.
Awesome. So my number 3 is another older film that I watched again for the first time with MC Young Knees. And we both really, really just fell head over heels for it. But I'm going to bring up Rosemary's Baby.
That's in my honorable mentions. Yep.
From 1968. There we go. Writing is small. But yeah, it's just a great film. The premise, if you don't know, is that this woman and her husband are expecting, and spoiler alert, the baby is the Antichrist. That's pretty wacky. And and yeah, it's got a lot of those same themes of an overall sense of dread, and something's not right that you can't put your finger on. And it does have a lot of really, really great moments of like dramatic build. But also one thing that struck me so much the first time that I watched it that really endeared it to me is the performance from Ruth Gordon, who really found a way to bring so much levity to what was going on and kind of break that tension. And there's a great, I don't know if it's a very, very old movie, so I don't know if we're going to tiptoe around spoilers, but ultimately, cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows that it's the Antichrist, but at the very, very end, there's like a knife that's thrown and it goes into the floor, and Ruth Gordon's character picks it up licks her finger and tries to smooth out the spot. And I think it's the funniest thing in the entire world that she's got this satanic cult meeting and she's worried about this dent in her floor. But yeah, that's just one point in that movie that really got me. And then of course, Mia Farrow and John Cassavetes, and just really, really great, tight knit. It almost reads as a play almost at some points with the four central characters. That'd be an interesting one that I would love to see adapted for the stage. Now that I think about it, I think it could work really well as a very chamber kind of horror play. But that's a discussion for another time. But anyway, Rosemary's Baby, great classic horror film.
Yeah, Ruth Gordon won the Academy Award for that performance.
Yes, deservedly so. She's so great in that movie, which it's really hard to be a bright spot in a movie that's just shines so bright on its own. But yeah, she's really something special in it.
I have yet to see it.
I just saw it recently, like within the past
that,
couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's eluded me somehow, and I need to check it out. I'd like to see it.
I think it was playing at the drive-in tonight.
Yeah. It feels like I've either seen it only in parts or it's just been so long, like since I was a little kid or something.
No, it's totally worth a revisit.
I definitely will, yeah.
I've got it on Criterion, and I'm just like so happy to have a nice copy of that movie because I love it so much. But yeah.
Cool. All right.
That's my number 3.
Okay. I'm going to go with another sequel for my number 3. I've got Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, yeah. And
My
that's
old
the
VHS.
original Dawn of the Dead, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 1978. This is my weird special edition VHS that I still have in my collection.
Cool.
If I kept it on VHS, there's probably something significant about it. Yeah, so I really love this movie. It's probably the best in the trilogy, the original Romero trilogy. And if that's the case, that would definitely make it the best zombie movie ever made. So I feel like this movie, like other zombie movies, are just trying to copy what this movie did ever since, right? You have this whole plot that is just it's following the logical implications of the story that's set up in Night of the Living Dead. It's like, okay, well, zombies have attacked this farmhouse. What if we expand it into the world and we show what's going on? If all of a sudden one day the world turns into this, where this is the phenomena that everybody has to confront and deal with, what happens to people? And so you quickly get to the point where it's like, well, okay, we can deal with what is happening. We can deal with the zombies themselves, but we can't deal with each other anymore. Right. And so that's what's, of course, that every zombie movie picked that up and ran with it. You got The Walking Dead. It's almost to the point where that's just a boring trope now. I'm so sick of zombie stuff, but this is the moment where I'm not sick of zombie stuff. This is when it was done right. And I know I saw this when I was too young as a kid. Everybody else was playing like G.I. Joe. We were playing Dawn of the Dead. We're like, yeah, we got to get to the elevator before, it's like, we were like, or something,
Nice.
man. 8 years old playing Dawn of the Dead. Love it.
Yeah. That the video I was watching earlier today brought up the point that the statement that it's making with the mall as the central safe zone. It's almost as if it's saying the zombies are coming to the mall constantly because there's something familiar about, that's where I get all my stuff. That's when I, in the past life, that's where I got the stuff. So that's where I should go for what I need. I didn't really ever think about that until today. But I like that.
It glamorizes the whole materialistic culture. It's like, well, look how fun they're in the mall. They can get whatever they want. And then it's like, it just day after day of this and the mundane, over and over, it just starts to crush them. And they realize, yeah, we can eat in the fancy restaurant here and we can sip wine. We can go to the stores and get whatever we want. But this is our whole life now. Our whole life is living in this consumerist microcosm. And there's that scene where they're looking at the zombies over the balcony and they're like, what do you think they are? And he's like, they're us, right? And it's like, that's a perfect sort of metaphor for the whole series, right? Brings a whole new depth of meaning that wasn't necessarily there in the original, even though I guess it was, but it's elevating it above just the shock value of dead people coming to life and eating people, I think.
Yeah. Well put.